Good afternoon. Today I'm speaking to Leigh Russell. Good afternoon. Would you like to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your books and how you became a writer?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to come along and chat to you. It's great fun. Particularly, I think nowadays, it's so nice to actually chat to somebody, isn't it? Because we don't have going on, really, do we? It's all done online. Everything's different, isn't it? But to introduce myself, my name's Leigh Russell, and I write a number of things. I'm best known, I think, for my Geraldine Steel series of crime thrillers, and it's actually a really, really amazing coincidence that today, when we're chatting, I actually received the very first advanced copy I've had of my latest book. So I'll just hold that up. This just literally arrived this morning, Evil Impulse. It's the 15th in the Geraldine Steel series. And my publishers have got a lovely display on the inside cover of the other books in the series. So, anybody looking at the book can see where we started and how many books are out and what they're all called, and see if you missed any. So that was fun. So funny enough, we were chatting just now, weren't we, about books coming out on Kindle and when it all started. And the very first Geraldine Steel book, Cut Short, came out just as the ebook revolution was really starting. And I remember a fellow author said to me, "You should ask your publisher to bring that out as an ebook." And I'd heard of ebooks, but I honestly wasn't quite sure what they were. So I mentioned this to my publisher, and he was, yeah. And then I mentioned it again. And eventually, about 6 months later, the book came out as an ebook. Well, how things have changed. I mean, that's not that long ago. It was about 12 years ago. And now my books sell hugely as ebooks. That's the main, I think the main sort of sales area of my books are ebooks. But all that has happened in such a short space of time. And of course, there are lots of books now that have just come out as ebooks. And the idea that someone who was involved in the industry, on the fringes, I'd just written a book and had it published. The idea that I didn't even know what ebooks were seems quite amazing now, doesn't it? If somebody you knew now said, "Oh, I've just had a book published," and you said to them, "Oh, will it come out as an ebook?" And they said, "Well, I'm not quite sure what that is." You'd think, "What?" We just didn't believe it, would we? Things change so fast. So that gives you a little kind of time frame, I guess, as to how long I've been writing, because the first book came out about 12 years ago, I think now. It's difficult to keep track, really. Since then, well, okay, so we've just published the 15th in that series, Evil Impulse. And so far, so good. The reviews and the NetGalley reviews seem to be quite positive, which I'm very happy about, because there's always that kind of fear when a new book comes out now that people will start saying, "Oh, she's gone off the boil. We've had so many of these books and we're getting fed up with them." I'm still very excited about writing them, and I still love writing them. And hopefully that transfers into the writing. People do still seem to be enjoying them. I recently signed, okay, that's number 15. Number 16 is due out, I think, in July. That's already been edited and everything's done. I've just yesterday sent book number 17 off to be edited. I recently signed a contract with my wonderful publisher, No Exit Press, for books 17 to 20 in the series. And again, there's that kind of visceral fear. I think, "Oh my God, what am I doing? I've written book number 17, but there's still 18, 20 to go, and I have no idea what I'm going to do, no idea what's going to happen in them. But there we are, I'm committed, so I will come up with something. And somehow it always seems to work. I will sit down and think, what on earth am I going to write about now? And then an idea pops into my head, off I go, and the book gets written. In addition to Geraldine Steel, I've written a trilogy for her sergeant, Ian Peterson. I've also written a trilogy for a kind of independent young woman called Lucy Hall. I've written two psychological thrillers, standalones. I have a dystopian novel coming out in April, and I've written another one, which I hope will get published. And I've also written a historical novel, which is due to be published sometime at the end of this year. We haven't sort of gone very far with fixing that yet. So I'm known for writing Geraldine Steel, but I like to think I'm not a one-trick pony. I've got other sorts of books that I can write, but it's Geraldine Steel who seems to be the most popular and keeps going.
When you started writing Geraldine Steel, did you plan on writing a series, and did you plan to be going to book 20?
No, I mean, I didn't even think what I was writing would get published, let alone be the first in a series. If I had known that the first book, Cut Short, was going to be the first in a series, I would have done almost everything differently. So I've really learnt on the job. So just for new writers who are planning out what they're going to write about, I'll give a few hints. One is, if you set your book in a particular place, then you can make links and contacts with the bookshops and the libraries when they're open in that place. You can build up a readership who live in that place. And I have actually done this. I've moved Geraldine to York, and I now have a huge following in York who love reading books set in York. But when I started, I literally just found a big empty space on the map, big empty space in Kent, made up a town, set it in the middle of that space, and that's where the book is set. So, of course, when the book was published, I couldn't go to any books there. I couldn't go to any libraries. Nobody living there was interested to read about a book set in their town because it didn't exist. So that's one thing I would have done differently. Another thing I would have done differently, when the series starts, my protagonist, Geraldine, is in her late 30s. And if I had known that we were going to run to 20 books, I would have made her a bit younger to start with. And as it is, she has to be a bit like Poirot and not really age. I sort of fudge it a bit. She's aged a little bit. You know, a milestone birthday is noted, but she stays sort of around the same age, because otherwise, over the 12 years that I've been writing, she would have reached retirement age. You know? So that's another thing I would have done differently. So in answer to your question, I had absolutely no idea that anybody would publish what I'd written. I certainly didn't see this as the start of a series. And in fact, one of the notes that my editor gave me for my very first book, and my publisher also said this, was you have to make your detective more interesting, because I was fascinated by the psyche of the killer. And that is really what interests me in my books. What is it drives somebody to kill another human being? So I wrote pages and pages and pages about my killer. And the detective was really sort of brought in to solve the crime. And my editor said, your detective is the character, because I by this point I'd signed a 3-book deal on the basis of my first manuscript. And so my editor said, your detective is the character that readers are going to follow through the series. You have to make her more interesting. So I had to work on her a bit. So there were so many things that I got wrong, really, when I started out. And I've been very fortunate to have a brilliant editor, and I've really learnt on the job. So I think when I do teach creative writing, which, I mean, I do occasionally do masterclasses, and I think in some ways, although I've never studied creative writing, because I've probably made every mistake that it is possible to make along the way, I actually do know quite a lot now, I think, about how to write a book and how to structure a book. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I'd better stop now. We don't have time for any more questions.
Did you always want to be a writer?
No, it never occurred to me to be a writer until I started writing, honestly. I started writing in my 50s. I was always an avid reader. And, you know, as a child, I always had my nose in a book. I then went and studied literature for 4 years at university. I then ended up teaching English at secondary school. I've always read. And in a way, it's the other side of the coin. Whether you are following somebody else into another world, you know, through the back of the wardrobe, into Narnia, down the rabbit hole, whatever, whether you're going into somebody else's world that they've created, or whether you're taking your readers into another world that you've created, it's two sides of the same coin. Hello.
It's been a pest.
And so, yeah, and And I think the best advice I've ever come across for aspiring writers was what William Faulkner said. He said, read, 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 read everything. And then he said, and I'll paraphrase now, he said, and then you kind of get to know what works and what doesn't work. And you write and you throw out what doesn't work. And I think inadvertently, I trained myself to write because I spent sort of 40 years reading every day, reading avidly. And so you absorb so much. And then when I started writing, I think I kind of had an idea of what works for a reader. But I didn't write initially to be published. Now, of course, when I write a book, particularly if it's one that's been, that's under contract, I know that there's a readership out there waiting for it. People are going to read it. And so I do write for readers. But when I started out, no, I was just having fun, just writing for myself.
And where was the switch? Where did you decide to go and get it published?
It was a light bulb moment. I just had an idea. And I just wrote and wrote and wrote compulsively for about 6 weeks. And then the story kind of came to an end. And then I thought, oh, I've written a book. So I printed it out, as we did in those days, posted it off in a brown envelope to 3 publishers, I think. And a couple of weeks later, I had a phone call from No Exit Press saying they were interested. And then a couple of months later, we signed a 3-book deal. And I've made it all sound very easy, but that was where the real work began, because then the manuscript went on to an editor and I had to do a lot of work. And it was about 18 months before the book was published. And it was, I wasn't going to send it off at all. And my daughter said to me, oh, go on, you might as well, you've written it. So I thought, well, what difference? Nobody's going to know. I did it under a pseudonym and sent it off and didn't expect to hear anything. And here I am. You just never know.
And what's been your moment where you thought, that's it, I'm a writer, I'm an author, I've made it?
When I got to a point where I was delivering 2 manuscripts a year and I was still teaching, and I realised that I could actually afford to stop teaching and just write. It was a bit of a jump, because when you're a teacher, or any job, really, a steady job, end of the month, salary comes in, that's it, whatever. At one point I had pneumonia and I was off work for 3 months. 1 month of that was school holidays and 2 months was during term time. And the school had to get in a supply teacher to cover for my classes. But I was just out for the count for 3 months. End of the month, salary came in on the dot. To give that up and just go on a kind of wing and a prayer, really, and to rely on writing for your, to pay bills, really, was a big jump. And my publisher was very, very good about it, and he agreed to pay me my royalties monthly. So I still had an amount coming in every month. I didn't have to wait that long, because I don't think I would have been able to wait that long. I was so used to having money coming in every month. But it was I couldn't carry on writing and teaching. I was just killing myself doing so much. I was riding 2 horses and I had to jump one way or the other. And by then, my passion had gone into writing. So that was the way that I chose to jump. And fortunately, it worked out. But I think as a teacher, you have to really, really be passionate about it. You have to really want to do it. And I did for a long time. I taught for about 20 years. But then somehow my passion sort of changed to writing, and one day I'll use my passion for writing and do something else. I am using my teaching skills at the moment because I'm a Royal Literary Fellow at the University of Westminster. So I'm helping students write their essays. Very part, but I'm using my teaching skills, which is quite nice. But no, I really rarely go a day without writing. I just totally hooked.
What authors inspired you as you grew up? What did you read?
Everything, really. I have a very eclectic taste. I like 19th century fiction, Dickens. I like just so much. More Kazuo Ishiguro, who writes so beautifully. But I also quite like reading. I was reading some Agatha Christie short stories recently. They're fun. And then I read a Neville Shute, which was actually probably not a great idea during a pandemic because it was quite depressing. It was a post-apocalyptic. So I'm now reading something. It's called, by an author I hadn't heard of, but it's called The Other Bennet Girl, and it's about Mary, the sister of Jane and Lizzie in Pride and Prejudice, and that's quite fun. I just pick things up, whatever takes my fancy. I've recently started reading David Baldacci, who I'd never read before, and that's really gripping. So yeah, different books. I like historical novels. I find it's somehow the quality of the writing, I think, that engages me. So it will be a book that I start reading, and some books I'll start reading and I just don't really get into it. And it may be that another topic, if I do get into it, it's a bit self-indulgent, really. It's just whatever I fancy reading at the time. My dad, who's 95, has just read for the first time War and Peace. So you never know. When I do tend to buy quite a lot of books, and I download quite a lot of books on my Kindle because that's so easy. And I'll often download a book that I'm not going to read, but I'll come around to it one day. I like the idea of having a vast library, and then that way you're never really, are you? Because there's always something you can read. You can always pick up a book and read. So, but yes, it's difficult to say what I like reading. When I was growing up, I loved books like, I loved Wuthering Heights, although Heathcliff is really a bit of a sadist, isn't he? But I just loved it, and Jane Eyre, all kind of classics, really, and Catherine the Rye, anything and everything, really, if it takes my fancy.
Sounds a bit like me. I'll read anything. I decided to tackle War and Peace last year. Never again.
Did you finish it?
Yes, I did.
Wait till you know. Oh, you did? Oh, well done. Oh, well, you have to chat to my dad then. He said it got a bit dull after a while. The beginning was good, but then he'd started. He's got these, 50 books to read before you die. So at 95, he thought he'd better get around to it. But I don't like books that are really complicated. I like books that I find readable, if you know what I mean. So, and I read. We recently watched The Queen's Gambit on television, and so I read that, and we watched The Night Manager, which I then read. So sometimes television can lead you to a book, and it can be quite helpful sometimes, because I find John le Carré is a little bit taxing for my little brain, really. But having seen it on the telly, you kind of know what you're dealing with, so that helped. But sometimes I want to be challenged, and a lot of the time I just want to relax and be entertained and taken out of myself, particularly at the moment. I think we need that more than ever, don't we?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I would. I found actually the most difficult thing about War and Peace was the names, because obviously when you read, you need to be able to pronounce in your head the names, and I couldn't, because they're all consonants and sentences. So, and once you get past that.
Yeah, there are so many of them. Yes, no, I think that's I think with all the Russian novels, that is a difficulty, isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I got it in my head. I was going to read it, so I did. Yeah.
Well, I guess it passed some time anyway.
Yeah, I was supposed to be studying at the time. I don't know what got into me. It took me about a month, I think. I can read a book in a day usually, so it was hard going.
Some book to read.
Yeah. If you were to be transported into your Geraldine Steel novels, would you get on with the characters?
Would I get on with the character? I think I'd rather like Ian Peterson. Yeah, I think I'd probably quite fancy him. Geraldine Steel, I think I'd find her a little bit standoffish, a little bit aloof. She's very, very focused on her work. And I don't think she's much fun, really. But then the times in which we see her in the books is when she's involved in a murder investigation. And so she's very, very driven. She's very passionate about justice. She talks about seeking justice for the voiceless dead, people who've been murdered, can't fight for themselves, so she kind of fights for them. So I think she's quite sort of earnest and serious about things. And I think that's an aspect of myself that comes out in her that I didn't really realize I had before I started writing. But one thing I really cannot bear is when things seem to be unfair. And I think her passion for justice is something that I'm expressing in the books, although I didn't realize that I had it before. Yeah, and I mean, the other characters obviously are the victims and the killers. I'm fascinated by the killers. In general, I'm just fascinated by the psychology of someone who kills, what makes somebody behave like that. And really, that's what I'm exploring in my books. And I think that's what differentiates each of my books, one from another. And that's really how I come to write my books, because it's just a question. Why would somebody kill another person? And once I have that reason and that motivation, everything spins out from there. You know, who is the person they've killed? Who else is around that person? Who else is going to be suspected? And, you know, how do they kill them? And how do they hide the body? That's a big question, because, of course, most murders, almost all murders, are solved by the police almost immediately, because they can trace the killer so quickly, because it's usually somebody who knows the victim. And, you know, if you kill somebody in your front room, well, there you go, the police come in, arrest you, and that's it. So part of the challenge, really, of writing a crime novel is you start out with the crime, and then you have to go through the whole book without the police being able to find out who did it until the end. And you can't have the police seeming too stupid. So you've got to have these who are completely baffled by something that they don't solve till near the end. So it's kind of fun, really. It's I enjoy the sort of puzzle aspect of it. I find it very difficult to stay one step ahead of my readers. Most of my readers, I mean, they're highly intelligent people. They read a lot of crime in the genre that I am. So every time I try to do a misdirection, they think, there's a misdirection. Or I try and throw in a red herring, and then, that must be a red herring. And, you know, you try and make out that somebody obviously killer, and then, yeah, okay, that must be a killer. She's trying to pull the wool over our eyes. So I find it very difficult to stay one step ahead of my readers. And occasionally I succeed brilliantly, and most of the time I don't. But that's, you know, that's something I try and my aim is that when somebody gets to the end of one of my books, they think, oh yeah, of course, why didn't I see that? Why didn't I spot that? It's so obvious. But, you know, if you make it obvious, they spot it. And I don't like books that pull something out of the hat right on the last page that readers couldn't possibly have known about, because I think that's sort of cheating, really. So you have to put all the clues in there, but kind of hide them in a way so readers don't spot them. And occasionally a reader, you know, I get emails and messages from readers, and sometimes somebody will say, I didn't think that clue was in there, and I went back and looked for it, and oh yeah, there it was. So you have to sort of hide it under a pile of other things. But of course, readers are looking for those clues that are hidden away, aren't they? So
Yeah.
That's the thing I find most difficult, really.
And what's the most interesting thing you've found when researching for your books?
I think the forensic science is quite phenomenal. I mean, it makes life very difficult for a crime writer, but you know, you can walk into a room and breathe, and the police can detect or the forensic scientists, the senior crime officers, whatever, they can detect your DNA, and they can identify your gender and your hair color just from you walking into a room and breathing. And fabric transference as well. If you brush past somebody, they can detect not only that your sleeve touched the other person's sleeve, or that your bum sat on a particular chair, but they can put it within a time frame. They say, oh, okay, you were in that house in those particular few hours. I mean, it's phenomenal. And the insect activity as well, which is fascinating, but I don't know. It's too kind of. I'm actually very squeamish and all sorts of things, really. But I think the forensic science is quite phenomenal now. Absolutely. I think, you know, we are able to achieve is quite remarkable.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing my degree in. And insects
I'm telling you, yeah.
And insects is what I'm doing my dissertation on, hopefully. So
yeah, I got as far as maggots, and then oh god no, it grosses me out. I hate maggots. But anyway, I should be coming to you for information, definitely.
Yeah,
I try with it all, but
it's
impossible to.
It is changing all the time.
Yes, yeah.
One interesting story that our entomologist lecturer taught us was her first case. There was a woman went missing. They found loads of blood in the bedroom. The guy said that she'd died in the bathroom, I think. They'd been taking drugs and she was a prostitute. And they done the luminol test and found blood in the bedroom and around the loft hatch. They went into the loft, and in the old water tank, they found loads of maggot casings. So they tested the maggot casings for drugs, and they found traces of drugs, which is the first time it had ever been done. So then they tested the maggot casings for DNA and found this prostitute's DNA in the maggot casings. So then they could prosecute the guy for murdering her. But there was no trace of her body anywhere. It was just maggot casings.
Amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I've been studying it for 4 years and it still blows me away sometimes. It's incredible.
Yeah. It's amazing. And they're making advances all the time, aren't they? And it is.
Yeah, it is. Totally thrown me now. I totally forgot what I was talking about. What was I going to ask? Would you consider writing with anyone else?
I did once discuss this with someone, a good friend who's and thought it could. It was going to be, I'm trying to remember, it was going to be a married couple, and I would write it from the woman's point of view, and he was going to write it from the man's point of view, and neither of us would know what the other one was writing until we'd written it, and then we compare notes, because the character wouldn't know what my character was doing, and my character wouldn't know what his doing. But I mean, it was a bit of a drunken conversation over a publisher's dinner, and I thought, this would be great, let's do it. And he was, and then we never got around to it. And then the following year, he was really enthusiastic, and we fixed a date. We said, right, by this date, we'll both send each other something, and neither of us did. So that's as far as I've got. But there are some amazing writing partnerships where, you know, like Nikki French or Michael Stanley. And Nikki French, they're, I think, a married couple, aren't they? Michael Stanley, the two of them actually live on different continents. I think it would be great fun, but I think I'd be impossible to work with. Really, I mean, I'm very controlling. One of the things about writing is that it's your book and you can do what you want. And sometimes, very often, in fact, I don't know what's going to happen until it happens. I think a lot of writing is worked out subconsciously. It's this idea that if you have a problem and they say if you sleep on it, you'll come up with the answer. Well, I think a lot of what's happening in a book goes on without our being aware of it. So, for example, I might have a character near the beginning of a book who says or does something, and I have no idea why, but it feels right, so I go with it. And then only later on in the book do I realise that, oh, that's why they said or did whatever they did earlier on, because it was leading up to this. But I haven't worked that out consciously yet. So I think as a writer, you have to kind of trust yourself and go with your sort of instincts and trust your unconscious mind is working things out. So I think to write as a team or a partnership, it would be very difficult in a way, because, well, I suppose you just have to absolutely implicitly trust one another. And if one of you wrote something that the other one was, what's that all about? And you said, no, that feels right, then you'd go with it. But I think if somebody challenged what I did when I didn't know what I was doing, I might not have the confidence to say, no, that's right. Whereas when it's just me, I'll just carry on and it all works out. So it would be very different, I think. I admire people who can do it. I wish I could do it because I think it might be fun, but I don't think anybody would actually ever want to write with me.
Have you ever written any people you know into your books?
Not consciously, not deliberately, no. Well, apart from, yeah, I mean, one time when I was still teaching and there was somebody at work who really, really annoyed me, really bugged me. And he happened to be quite short. So I had a short guy in my next book. And I can't remember if he was a nasty character or if he got killed, but, you know, maybe just kind of very slightly like that. Or if there was somebody who had, I don't know, who dyed their hair pink, who really annoyed me, I might have a character who dyed their hair pink in the next book, but it would never be any more than that. No, I never deliberately or consciously include any parts of myself or people that I know in my books. But of course, it gets in there, doesn't it? Sometimes people say to me, "Oh, you must have been, you know, upset with this or with your mother or whatever." And you, oh, okay, well, no, not really, but maybe slightly. So I think these things happen unconsciously, and I don't know how or why it works. And almost every time I'm writing a book, and I think every author will say this, there's that difficult part in the middle. You start writing and you're full of excitement and enthusiasm, you know, burnt page, you can start. And the end of the book, when you know where you're going or what's going to happen, you gallop on towards the end. But there's that patch in the middle where you have to get from the setup to the dramatic climax at the end. And you have to keep the tension going and you have to keep your readers interested. But how do you do that? And I've forgotten what the question was now. What was I talking about?
The putting people you know and things.
Yeah. So I think I think the middle part of the book sometimes is a more kind of conscious writing, but by and large, I think a lot of it all happens sort of unconsciously, and then you get to a certain point. I mean, yeah, that's right. I know what I was going to say now. Yeah, after the sort of setup and you get to the middle bit, and I always invariably get to a point, as I think every author does, where I think, what am I doing? You know, I have a deadline. This book has to be delivered. This manuscript has to be delivered by a certain date. I'm kind of 2/3 of the way through. And this is not working. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing here. But you kind of keep going, and somehow it just sort of works itself out. And I don't know how. It's a bit of a mystery. And I don't know that personally I would ever want to go to a creative writing course, because I don't want to demystify that process. I love the fact that somehow the creativity just makes it work. And I don't really want to know why or how. I think that might take all the fun out of it for me. Because for me, writing a book, and I saw a question actually earlier on about do I plan my books or not? For me, writing is very sort of organic, and I don't know what's going to happen. And that's, oh my God, what am I doing? What's going to happen? That's so exciting. And that makes the process of writing very exciting. I would love to be able to plan my books out. Jeffrey Deaver spends, he says, 6 weeks planning his books in detail. He writes a synopsis for every chapter. So when he comes to write the book, all he has to worry about is writing it. And he is absolutely brilliant. And his plots are so clever and complicated. I mean, he really is a genius. I'd love to be able to work like that, to have everything planned out so that, you know, if something isn't quite working, I'd know before I start writing. And by the time I sit down to start the book, it's all there for me. But somehow I always try that and it never works, because I have a sort of plan in my head what's going to happen, but then something else crops up, or a character seems to want to do something different, or something doesn't work. So I always say that when you write a book, it's like you're going on a journey, and you are actually taking your reader on a journey, but it's like, you know where you're going to start and you know your destination, but how you get from one to the other, you might think you're going to motor on up the motorway, but then, oh, actually, there's a rather nice scenic route along there. I think I might take that. Oh, here's a roadblock, so I've got to take a detour. Oh, no, now the road's flooded, I've got to go somewhere else. So you know where you start, you know where you're going to end up, but how you actually get there, for me, is a bit kind of organic. And I think that possibly in my case, not in every case, obviously, because we're all different and there are no rules, but for me, I think not knowing what's going to happen makes the whole thing a bit more, a bit more exciting, really. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And actually, a lot of people say that. And as a reader, it's really weird to hear that. But so many authors say it that obviously, you know, it's quite common. But, you know, to hear that generally a lot of authors don't know when they start their book, you know, where it's going to go is really strange. But I've got used to it now, I think.
I know where it will end up.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Agatha Christie, didn't she? She wrote, didn't decide until the very end which of her many suspects was going to be the killer. But I tend not to do that. I know who the killer is usually, because I think if you don't know, then how do you know to put in a clue and when to misdirect your readers? So I think I have an overall sort of idea that this person gets killed and this person gets caught in the end. But all the bits in between can just sort of evolve. And I think I'm quite a creative writer in that sense, as a lot of writers are. I mean, you know, but we are all different. And as I said before, no rules. The rule when you're writing, this is what I always tell people when I'm teaching creative writing, there's only one rule, and that is to make it work for your reader. So other than that, you can do what you want.
Do you tend to get the ideas for plots or characters first?
It's always my killer, the killer, his motivation. So sense that this sort of plot, the two are kind of interlinked, aren't they? Why the killer kills his victim sort of gives you the plot, doesn't it? So, but yeah, the character really that comes first for me. Although my books are plot driven and plots are very, you know, neatly worked out and all, that follows my characters. And is, you know, all kind of, they're all part of it, aren't they?
And is there any subject that's an absolute no-go area for you to write about?
Yes. I would never describe torture, and I'd avoid torture unless it was absolutely essential to establish that this character is so vile and nasty. But and in a way, the more evil your killer is, the greater the tension and the more your readers are invested in the killer being caught. And in fact, one criticised my very first book. He said the killer was not evil enough because in some ways the killer is the killer. He is the killer. He's a character who should not have been out in society unsupervised. But I wouldn't write about torture. That sort of thing doesn't inspire me really. I'm interested in but I do have one book which I think is one of my best, where there is quite a lot of blood and guts, because that is just necessary, because it's somebody with an axe to kill people. Well, you can't do that. So that I would never, and I hope this isn't a spoiler for any of my books. I know a lot of people do this, but I would never kill a child in one of my books, because I have children, I have a grandchild. Yeah, it's just not somewhere I would want to go in my head. You do have to go to these places to some extent in your head. You have to go to them in your imagination. And I wouldn't want to try and imagine, you know, I wouldn't want to try and walk around in the shoes, the skin of somebody who was able to torture or kill children. It just, it would, you know, completely traumatize me. So I would never do that. Adults doing all things to each other, yeah, no problem.
I have a few questions that got asked on Facebook, so I'll ask you some of these. Duncan Brockwell wants to know how many books you've written. He thinks it's something like 60 odd.
Yeah, hi Duncan. Right. So I honestly I have to stop and think here. So there's 3 Ian Peterson, there's 3 Lucy Hall, there's the 2 standalones, so that's 15, 18, 21. So 23 published, and there's another Geraldine coming out this year, Dystopian one coming in April, that will be 25. So I think it'll be 26 by the end of 2021. At the moment, it's 23 actually published. In terms of books I've written, there are a couple of other books that will probably never get published. I've also written, in addition to my crime novels and my dystopian novels and my historical novel, I have also written a comic novel, which I think is really fun, but my agent had a go at finding a publisher. Nobody has picked it up yet. So there's a few other things that I've written that will probably never get published. So I've actually written I've probably written about 28 books, but so far I had 23 published. So I mean, if you read them all 3 times, Duncan, you'd be not far off the 60.
He said you're a big inspiration to him. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, bless him. The guy that's just written a 105,000 word novel in just over 2 months. So yeah, he's a machine as well.
I can write quick. I the manuscript that in, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 weeks. So they're much simpler, you know, is the way it is. They're from the point, but you do also inside the killer's head. There's different viewpoints, different people doing different things on the same day. It can be quite kind of complicated to work out, and I always get in a muddle, and my timelines are terrible. Writing in first person, you just kind of start at the beginning. Your readers only know what your character knows. There's only one viewpoint, so they're much faster to write, and I type very quickly. So I could, in theory, write a book in a couple of weeks, but it's not the typing, it's not what goes on at the keyboard that makes a book, it's what goes on up here, it's the thinking. So Geraldine Steel take me at least 6 months to write, partly because they're more complex and partly because there's a lot to think about. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason to it, is there? Because I know people who've spent 20 years writing a book and it might never get published. And I don't think I would have the patience to do that, to be honest. You know, once I've started, I really want to get it finished, and then there'll be another one to write. And I think I wondered this sometimes, if I hadn't found a publisher fairly quickly for my first book, because back in those days, you couldn't self-publish, and, or, you know, people didn't. It was a different sort of animal because there were no ebooks. It was all print books. So if I'd not found a publisher fairly quickly, I wonder whether I would have actually just gone on to do something else. I don't know. But it's a inexplicable thing, but this is definitely me. This is what I do. I think I've always been a writer, even though I didn't write till I was, you know, had lived for half a century. I felt it's almost like, not exactly coming home, but I just feel so comfortable as a writer. That's what I do. And curiously, I have this, I don't know if you've heard of this, it's so ridiculous, this thing called white coat blood pressure, which I've developed as I've got older. Yeah. And basically what it, when you go to the doctor, they take your blood pressure and it's sky high, but most of the time it's just normal. So I have this thing now, I don't know why. And so I had to have a 24-hour blood pressure monitor attached to me, which is quite weird because every 20 minutes it sort of buzzes and tightens on your arm. And for the 24 hours, my blood pressure was absolutely fine. But when I went to the doctor, it was really high. And I felt quite relaxed. But it was quite interesting because I found I've always been a bit of a nervous driver. And the times when I was driving, for this 24-hour period, my blood pressure went really high. And so I stopped driving because I thought, well, okay, this is potentially affecting my health. Although I was completely unaware of it, I didn't feel, stressed when I was driving, but clearly my body was reacting to it. And the time when my blood pressure was at its lowest, can you guess?
When you were writing.
When I was writing, I know. So there I was writing about, people doing whatever awful things they were doing, chopping people's heads off, or, stalking people, all these awful things. And my blood pressure was really So I think writing is actually, I think for all of us, reading the same, it's good for us because it takes us out of whatever's going on into a different world, doesn't it? And I think fiction is like a holiday, isn't it? Because real life, however wonderful it is, there are stresses. It can be hard, it can be boring, there's all sorts of things. Whereas fiction, you're away from yourself, aren't you? It's like a holiday from reality. So I can't remember how I came on to talking about blood pressure, but how many books? Yeah.
Alison Morgan would like to know when did purple become your favourite colour and why?
Hi, Alison. Thank you very much for the question and for the flattery. That will be remembered. And hi, Alison. It's a long time since we met, but we have actually met, which is lovely, and hopefully we will meet again. Purple, I don't know. It's a bit silly, isn't it? I just started wearing purple. I liked it. It's partly lazy. If I have to buy new clothes, which I rarely do, it cuts down on the decision making because I just buy whatever's purple and that makes life easy. I need a phone cover. Okay, here it is. Just find the purple one. It makes life very easy. Actually, I do have glasses with purple frames, but I kept dropping them and the frames broke. So I've got these ones now for now until I can get back to the optician. It just makes life sort of easier for me. And I think in some ways I'm very kind of functional. So, I used to say, and obviously my family would never have gone along with this, but I used to say it was so much easier. There's 4 of us in the family. All my husband's clothes are blue. One daughter can always be in green. One daughter always in red. I'm always in purple. How easy would it be to do the laundry? You just put them in the piles of colours. So I think it's partly lazy. And then it became a bit of a thing. And then I just sort of thought, well, I like purple. Why shouldn't I wear purple? Why shouldn't I dye my hair purple? So maybe it was a bit of a midlife crisis. I don't know. It's quite harmless, but it was fun. And it can be useful because once or twice, one time I was at a literary festival and I left my jumper behind. And it was actually a jumper that I really liked. And then somebody got in touch on Facebook or someone and said, oh, we found a purple jumper. We knew it was yours because it's purple, so I've kept it for you. And in a bookshop one time, they told me, somebody came in and they said, I want to buy books by this author. I can't remember her name, but she always wears purple. And so the person working in the bookshop said, oh yeah, that's Leigh Russell. So it does actually have its uses. It's kind of a bit frivolous. And I like that aspect of it because why shouldn't we be a bit frivolous? It made it much easier when I was working, when I was teaching, get up in the morning, take the top purple t-shirt off the pile, top purple chinos, and off you go. You don't have to think, what shall I wear? And I didn't realise for a long time, actually, that some people use their clothes to express how they're feeling. But one of my daughters, who's very visual, which I'm not at all, and if she's feeling really bright and chirpy, she'll wear something yellow and bright. And if she's feeling a bit low, she'll dress in black. And her clothes kind of reflect how she's feeling. And I just don't think in those terms. So that bit of my brain, I think, is just not there. So I can't say why. It's a bit immature and silly, isn't it? I think a lot of teenagers don't go through a phase of being a goth or wearing purple or whatever. And they say writers never grow up, don't they? So I guess I'm just, being a bit childish and enjoying it. Why not?
Well, it's my favourite colour as well, so I don't care what anyone says.
Yeah, a lot of people like purple.
Yeah, the only reason I have pink hair is because I'm so pale. So if I have purple hair, then it just makes me look half dead. So it's pink instead. But I do put purple in it occasionally.
Purple fades very quickly, doesn't it? because I had a dip dye. I dyed for quite a long time. The bottom of my hair was purple because I didn't want to bleach on my head. I'm too scared and old to do that. But I had a purple dip dye, and actually I shouldn't show you my hair because I just cut it myself. And when my daughter, who lives with us, saw me, she burst out laughing. And I'd had lunch with my husband and been sitting with him for a few hours, and he hadn't noticed, but my daughter's the one who's very visual, spotted straight away that actually one side was about 2 inches longer than the other side. But anyway, it's locked down, nobody
Stuart James asked whether you planned your books or go with the flow, which you've answered, I think, haven't you?
Yeah, I think I sort of go with the, hi Stuart, and thank you for the question. And yeah, I try to plan them. I just go with the kind of but yeah, I just keep writing and hope for the best, really.
Yeah. And then John Nichol wants to know what it's like having Lee Child as a fan.
Lee Child is so sweet. I mean, he's such a lovely guy. I've known him for quite a long time because we used to meet in the days when there were literary festivals, and we'd sort of chat. And I think he found that some people were a little bit overawed by him, and I just wasn't at all. I mean, because I'm sort of a person, I'll speak to anybody. I mean, I remember when I was researching one of my books and I wanted to know, this was one of my Lucy Hall books. The first one is set in the Seychelles, the second one in Paris, and the third one in Rome. So let's do a bit of traveling for those. And we went to Paris and stayed in Le Marais, which is lovely. And I needed to research the police force in Paris and how they react in certain circumstances. So I wanted to go into this police station. It was very difficult to find the right one. And anyway, found a police station, and there was a policeman standing on guard at the entrance with a massive sort of machine gun. And I mean, it didn't even cross my mind, I'm British, I can go into a police station. So I just marched in, and this policeman said, "Where are you going? And, who are you?" And I just sort of said, "I'm going in," and just walked past him. And my husband said, he had a machine gun. You just march past this guy with a machine gun, almost kind of barge him out of the way. I said, "Well, I'm a citizen. I was going to the police station." So I was not overawed by Lee Child. We just chatted, and then he read one of my books, and which I didn't even give him. I forced him to buy it. Which, looking back on it, it's so bad. Because I didn't know this. I was fairly new on the scene. I didn't know that you give books to people, and I wanted another sale. So, but anyway, he very kindly bought my book and got me to sign it. But he did read it and he liked it. So that was cool. Yeah, he's a nice guy. I think of him more as a bit of a friend than a fan, really. Although we don't often get to see one another. But he's a very nice guy, and of course he's retired from writing now, which I think is time. He's paid his dues, hasn't he? He's given us all such a lot of wonderful books. So it's a pity, but good for him, really. So yeah. So yeah, what is it like? Well, I mean, it's wonderful having anybody as a fan, really. And Lee Child, he's just a guy. He's a really lovely guy. He's incredibly clever and absolutely brilliant and so talented. But, he's a reader, isn't he? Like anybody else. So yeah, it's lovely. I love having fans.
Are you friends with lots of other authors?
Yeah. I mean, ones that you would know, Peter James, he's been very kind. Ellie Griffiths is lovely. I mean, there are just so many. And, new authors that people won't have heard of and may do one day. I mean, you just never know. I always say to people, even people who've not yet been published, I say, look, I'm a best-selling author at the moment. In a couple of years' time, I might be forgotten about, and you might be a best-selling author. I mean, writing is a great leveler. Nobody is above or below anybody else. Just some of us are a bit further along the path than others. Some of us have been more fortunate than others. Some of us may be more talented than others, but who knows? Things can change all the time.
And do you get a lot of feedback from your readers?
Yes, I do. People contact me through my website, and people contact me through social media, and it's generally very positive, because I think on the whole people are nice. And I do sometimes get messages saying, oh, there's a typing error on this page, or this didn't quite work, or asking me about things. But by and large, it's just, when's your next book out? Love it. Which are the messages that I like.
Yeah, apparently that's an annoying question, because it's hard work writing a book and it takes a long time. I keep getting told off when I ask, when's the next one? But I read quickly, I want the next one. But I get told off quite a lot. We're typing as fast as we can.
I mean, it is hard work writing, but on the other hand, it's wonderful, it's great fun, and I'm very fortunate to do it. And if somebody asks, when's the next book out? Well, that's lovely, really, that somebody wants to read another one.
Yeah. I always say it's a compliment.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely.
Who's the most famous person you've ever met?
I've met Princess Anne. She's quite famous, isn't she? Lee Child is pretty famous. Rupert Henry Jones is quite famous. I don't know, really. Most famous. Yeah, I would say probably Princess Anne. Do you think she's more famous than Lee Child? I don't know.
Yeah, it depends on who you're asking, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've not met any of the Beatles, or not met David Beckham. I'm trying to think who I can think of who's famous. I've not met Meghan Markle. I'm not sure I'd want to. But in the world of writing, I would say probably I've met David Mitchell. He's quite famous, isn't he?
Oh wow, yeah, I like David Mitchell.
Yeah. But probably it was certainly within the world of crime fiction. I would say, I guess it's Lee Child and Peter James and Geoffrey Deaver. He's pretty famous, isn't he? Yeah.
What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you?
I'm not going to tell you that. I don't know, actually. There've been so many. Where do I begin? Most embarrassing thing. Oh, yeah, actually, it's so embarrassing. I don't even want to say it. I once asked somebody when her baby was due and she wasn't pregnant, but she was, she looked as if she could have been. You know what I mean? So that was pretty embarrassing. And I tried to sort of say, oh, I was confusing her with somebody else, but she knew I wasn't. What else? I don't know. There's just so many. I have put my foot in it quite a few times, but I think as I've got older, I've got less embarrassed about things, because, we all say stupid things, don't we? And we all make mistakes. But when you're younger, you think other people don't, and it's just you. I'm trying to think of other embarrassing things. I can't think of anything, actually. That's a bit embarrassing, isn't it?
Duncan,
I'm sure
Duncan thinks I've forgotten. I've not forgotten. I will keep asking him until he tells me something. Just in case you're watching, Duncan, I haven't forgotten. If you were to invite 4 famous people to a dinner party, who would you invite?
Okay, do they have to be alive?
No, it's your dinner party.
History?
Have whoever you want.
So they could be from history?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would actually really, he'd probably be quite unfriendly, but I would like to meet Leonardo da Vinci, because I think so many of his ideas were so far ahead of his time. I mean, he actually invented a sort of submarine and a helicopter. How could somebody back then, during the Renaissance, have thought of these things? So I think if ever there was a time traveller, which I don't believe there ever was, but if anybody had ever travelled in time to the future, I would think he had. So I think I'd quite like to meet him just for that reason. I think, probably all these people would absolutely hate to meet me, but even so, I think Conan Doyle would be quite an interesting person. I'm trying to think who would be sort of interesting. Maybe one of the Roman emperors, I think, to just kind of try and get an idea of their narcissistic kind of psyche. Who else? Who would I like to have dinner with? Oh, goodness. Actually, maybe Lee Child. He's very good company. He's very pithy and entertaining. Giles Brandreth, I've met him and he's hilarious.
And he wouldn't get a word in edgeways.
I know, yeah. And James, I can't even think of his name now. Oh, the name is gone. But, you know, other authors that I've met, it seems to be all kind of author people, really. But I suppose I've met authors more than other people, probably. David Bowie would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And maybe John Lennon. I don't know. There have been so many interesting people, haven't there? Yeah, I mean, that's more than 4, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think just have a banquet with them all is fun.
They're all men as well.
Yeah, it's funny actually. I was talking to someone yesterday, and when I asked that question to men, they generally invite all men, whereas women invite a mixture. So for a woman to invite all men is really strange.
Yeah, well, I'm a bit odd.
It's much more fun that way.
Yeah, I suppose I was just thinking in history, who have been the most interesting sort of minds, and women generally in history didn't get such fair crack of the whip, did they?
No.
So
yeah. So what's next for you?
Well, okay, so Geraldine Steel number 17 has just been sent off for editing, so I'll get that back. It's a bit early. I'm often a few months early with my submissions. On the 12th of January, which is tomorrow, isn't it? Tomorrow, yeah. I'm expecting edits for my first dystopian novel, which is going to be published in April. So I'm going to be pretty busy. I only have a 2-week turnaround for that, so I'm going to be pretty busy, sort of full-time doing those edits. When that is finished, when I finish with that, then I need to start writing the next Geraldine Steel, which will be number 18. And I'll also have the edits for number 17 coming. And then I'll have the edits for my historical novel. So, I mean, it's going to be pretty busy this year, actually. And then at the end of that, I mean, I've been extremely fortunate because whenever I finish one book, because I'm writing a series, there's always the next one to write. So although and I think a lot of authors probably feel this, when you finish writing a book, you feel a bit kind of flat because it's been so much in your head for so long, and then it's just gone. A bit like leaving a job, I suppose, or if you retire or something. So I've always got another book to write. So I'll have the next Geraldine Steel to write. I've written 2 psychological thrillers, and quite a few people have asked me, when am I going to write another psychological thriller? But I don't have one in my head. You know, you have to have that idea for a standalone. So I don't know if one of those will crop up. I don't really know. I mean, I'll be writing Geraldine Steel. I don't know what else I'll be writing. I might just do more reading. It's very difficult. I never thought I would write a dystopian novel. I never thought I'd write a historical novel. I never thought I'd write a crime novel until I started. So it's difficult to know what's going to pop up when there's space in your head. And hopefully just enjoy the summer seeing people who we haven't been able to see for a long time.
Are you planning on going to any of the festivals if they happen?
I don't know. We used to go to so many. I used to be so busy. And I mean, there was crazy things like when the 10th Geraldine Steel came out, my publisher organised, I visited 10 cities in 10 days. We did the festival in Glasgow. We did the York Literary Festival because they were all sort of around the same time. I went to Edinburgh for the book festival. I think I can't even remember now where I went. All around the country. We went up north, we went down south. I'm actually in, I think it's May, I can't remember the date, Portsmouth Mystery Fest that we normally go to. That's going to be online this year. I'm actually very flattered to be invited to be the guest of honour at that this year. I'll tell you when it is. I'm just looking it up. It's sometime at the beginning of May, I think. Here we are, March, not May. Well, it's not long then, is it? Sorry, 6th of March, yeah. I knew it began with an M. 6th of March. Okay, so you put it in your diary, 6th of March, Mystery Fest will be online, and I'll be interviewed there. So yeah, I'm sort of going to that. Other than that, I don't know, because I don't really know what's going to be happening. And I'm going to, if I'm invited, I'll go. I've been invited to do something for the Hertfordshire Libraries events. I'm doing something. I don't know when yet. We haven't finalised the date, but they've invited me to give a talk. I like to support libraries, so I think once we're out of all of this, I might just go around as many libraries as I can, just doing little talks. That's quite a nice thing to do. So I haven't really, it's difficult to make plans at the moment, isn't it? And part of my brain is almost kind of switched off. You know, we've sort of adjusted, haven't we? And part of me is just at home and that's it. Yeah. And there's going to be a bit of an adjustment when we can go out again. In some ways it's going to be a bit of an effort. So I have no plans at the moment for festivals, but I think when the time comes, yeah, I'll probably be there. I usually go to Crime Fest, usually pop in at Harrogate. It's nice when I'm invited to actually do something there. Doesn't happen every year. And there's lots of other festivals that go on. But I don't know, it kind of got to the point that we were a little bit overwhelmed with festivals, didn't it? There were just so many that it became difficult to sort of choose what to do. You can't do everything, can you? So no, nothing in the pipeline apart from 6th of March and something with the Hertfordshire Libraries. They're the only ones that I've got. I don't even know if we're doing anything for the this publication after the the problems that I had last time with the launch of the 14th book. I kept going offline and couldn't get one. I've given up on that. I'm on a Facebook party, actually. I've done that before now. A little sort of just event on my Facebook page. It's the 26th of January. But I'm not sure if I'll still be busy with edits at that point. I get them on the 12th and I've got 2 weeks. So yeah, I might have just finished those edits then actually and do something. Yeah. But I don't know. I'm not terribly organised about this.
Well, I have no more questions for you, unless there's anything else that you want to mention before we go.
No, I mean, just that it's been fun chatting, and thank you so much. I don't even know what the time is. Oh, almost 5 already. Yeah, we've been chatting for a while, haven't we?
Yeah.
But, thank you very much to the people that sent in questions. And, if anybody ever wants to ask me something, you can always pop a question on my Facebook page and I can answer there. But I think we've probably covered it all, really, haven't we?
Yeah. So do you just want to tell everyone where they can get in contact and where they can find your books?
Yeah, sure. All the links are on my website, which is quite simply Leigh Russell, is one word, leighrussell.co.uk. That's right, isn't it? .co.uk. Yeah, leighrussell.co.uk. So there's links there to my Facebook page, my Twitter account. I have a newsletter there, which people are welcome to subscribe to, and then you get, little previews and snippets and things. And my books are all available in bookshops, which we can't get to. They're all available in libraries, and please do keep borrowing them from the libraries, because authors do get some, royalties from that. And obviously on Amazon, they're all available on Amazon, on Kindle. Here it is again. This is the latest one, Evil Impulse, and it has, in the print copy, I don't know if it's in the ebook, it has a list of all my books. But if you go to my website, you can find them all. If you have any problem getting hold of any print books, do let me know, and I'll tell my publisher, and they can sort something out. What else can I say? That's it, really. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. I'm not on anything else, because I started off having a blog, And then I was told, oh, that's not enough. You've got to be on Facebook. So I went onto Facebook, and then I was told, oh, no, nobody's on Facebook now. You've got to be on Twitter. So I went on Twitter, and then I was told, oh, no, nobody's on Twitter now. It's got to be, I think the next one was Pictogram, and then it had to be Instagram. And I got to a point, I find all these things a bit of a struggle anyway. So I'm quite active on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter, and that's it. I don't even do my blog anymore because I kind of forgot how to do it. And then they changed it all from Blogspot to web page or something, what do they call it now? And I couldn't get the hang of it. And I tried, and you can put pictures up and they all went in the wrong place. So I have a newsletter that goes out once a month, which just, chats about what I'm doing. It's quite short, and I interview other authors on there, and sometimes do little previews of my books. And you can find that, as I say, on my website. And you can contact me on my website. I'm contactable on Facebook, on Twitter, and on my website. So yeah, I love hearing from readers, especially if they've enjoyed my books.
Awesome. Thank you very much.